I never want him to ration that medication. I never want him to feel like we can't go to the pharmacy because we have other bills to pay. I will scrape pennies off the sidewalk to keep my husband alive.
Medication is supposed to help patients, not hurt them. But the rising cost of insulin is putting local families in physical and financial danger. Valley News Team's Veronica Marshall shares one family's emotional story and the push to help them and others find relief.
When he ended up getting discharged from the hospital, I was on my way over to the pharmacy. Don't worry, babe, I'll get your prescriptions filled. And I was thinking $50, $100 maybe, you know. No, it was thousands of dollars. So I stood there and I cried because I didn't have an extra $1,000. A lady ended up giving me money and said, "You need this more than I do." And so I don't know her name, and I tried to give it back and she would not give it back or take it back. And I just want to say thank you, and I'll never forget that, ever.
Naomi Birkeland's husband needs insulin to live after an illness wiped out his pancreas 3 years ago. But Birkeland says rising drug costs are forcing the family to make tough decisions.
Between paying my premiums to have the insurance and the insulin out of pocket, I'm paying about $11,400 a year. I love him. I want him to live, but I also need a roof over my children's head. So it gets to be very hard financially.
Her family isn't alone. More than 7 million Americans need insulin to live. But insulin prices have nearly tripled since 2002, causing some patients to go to extreme lengths to afford their medication.
If your regimen requires a certain dose, and that's the dose that you need, well, if you can't afford to have that dose, then you'll try to lower the dose to then make the medicine last longer.
But cutting back on insulin puts users at risk for heart disease, stroke, blindness, kidney failure, and amputations. Now families, doctors, and advocates are turning to politicians for relief.
There's a push to try to talk to senators and try to get legislature to try to say that this is not okay. The price that we pay for insulin here in America is probably about 6 times higher than what they do in Europe anyway, for the same insulin.
State Senator Tim Mathern says he wants to help, but he needs residents to speak up.
Citizens are not at the legislature very often. Pharmaceutical companies are. I would be most willing to work with citizens about legislation in that regard, but we need a groundswell. We need a greater movement of people asking for this.
Birkeland says legislators need to do something now because it's not just her family who's suffering.
If you think about all the younger kids coming off their parents' insurance, I mean, they can't afford that. Nobody can.
Veronica Marshall, Valley News Live.
Some patients also try to buy their insulin overseas or online to get cheaper prices. Doctors don't recommend that, saying they can't guarantee those drugs are safe. But you can buy older formulas of insulin for a cheaper price at stores like Walmart.